Myself Manjunath from the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering of KLSVD Alial welcomes everyone for this session on the subject testing and commissioning of the power system apparatus, which is an elective for a 7th semester having the subject code of 17EE752. In the previous session, we started with the module number 4, which is related to underground cables. And the previous session we had a discussion about the UZ cables, the classification of the UZ cables, merits and demerits of underground cables, as well as the factors that are considered for selection of the proper underground cable for a specific application. That depends upon the place at which the particular cable is used, as well as the current capacity required, as well as the voltage rating of the particular system where the particular the underground cable is used. Among the merits, not only it provides the aesthetic look, but also the faults occurring in case of the cable is very less compared to the overhead lines, because these are beneath, maybe below the earth surface. They exposed to the atmospheric conditions is very less, and effect of lightning is almost zero. That's why the underground cables are used. But major disadvantage is economic aspect is to be considered, because these UZ cables will be costlier when compared to the overhead cable, which are bare conductors. Then afterwards we started with the packaging and the handling of the UZ cables. Once they manufactured, the specific steps are to be taken to for the packaging. Once packaging is done, it has to be transported from the manufacturing area to the laying area, or generally we call it the installation area. We have to undergo that all this the packing system as well as the transportation system should be done, or maybe should be according to the procedures which is given by the standard specifications. Once it comes to the installation area, the storage becomes important, because if you are going to install immediately, no storage is required. If you are installing the cable after the 2 or 3 months after receiving the underground cable, you have to make elaborate the storage arrangement so that the cable should be protected properly without the entrance of the moisture content into the cable from either ends of the cable as such. Therefore, the specific rules and regulations which is uh, given by the specifications or maybe manufacturers should be followed for packaging, transportation, and handling, what you have seen in the previous class. In this class, we are going to have a topic related to the installation of the underground cable and how it can be laid. And in that laying method, we're going to have different methods of laying. After the class, a student should be in a position to explain the installation procedures that followed for the underground cable installation according to the standard specification. Then they should be in the position to explain what are the different methods of laying, how those methods are implemented. That becomes the part of today's session. Let us go one by one. The first we go for the cable installation should be carried out to meet the requirement of Indian electricity rules. As you know that the Indian electricity rules of 1956 given many guidelines for installation of electrical system or maybe electrical installation. Therefore, the cable installation should be carried out and it should meet the requirements of the Indian electricity rules or maybe IE rules of 1956 and other regulation in force, and necessary checks or tests should be carried out before commissioning of the cable. That is, not only it has to follow, the procedure has to follow the Indian electricity rules, but also any regulation related to the checking of the cables and testing of the cable should be done before the commissioning or with charging the cable. It is also necessary to consult the local authorities. This is almost essential. That is, whenever we want to lay a cable, the surrounding area should be properly checked out, and the consultation with the local authorities and public utilities like telephone, water works, railways, telegraph, and the gas supply and water supply utility system to be consulted, because all these gas pipelines or water pipelines or maybe the telephone line normally in present days is a OFC cable will be laid underground. Therefore, while laying the cable or the installation of the cable, the proper procedure should be followed, but even that the laying authorities should consult the public utilities so that damage should not occur to the other utility systems. The cable installation should be carried out by an authorized person. That is one of the important aspect of the installation. That is, a technical person or maybe any person who is authorized should be carry that particular the work of laying. And that is the competent person who can undertake the work according to regulation is to be given. And not only that one, that is the concerned administration and the Indian Electricity Act 1910 should be followed there and there in the different states. After removal of the packing, once the cable comes into picture, that is the cable drum comes into the laying area, the package should be removed. The cable should be inspected. That is what generally we do it in all electrical equipment. Once the package is removed, the damages are checked and checked for its specification, whether we have received or maybe they have received the cable according to their requirement or not. If any problem with the installation of underground cable, it has to be brought back to a notice of the concern, or maybe the manufacturer, the engineer or representative to replace it or maybe rectify the fault which is there in case of a particular the cable. And these cables may be sometimes mounted or maybe installed indoor or maybe the outdoor. Cable should be installed and maintained properly for successful operation of any plant. That is, the reliability of any transmission system or maybe distribution system or any system totally depends upon how proper the underground cable is maintained or installed. If you are completely dependent upon the underground cable, in case of some factories, it is, or maybe the apartments, they are going to use the underground cable for distribution. That's why complete reliability of the supply or maybe system totally depends upon how well that maintenance of the underground takes place and how well it is installed. The preconditions to be followed during the process of installation are, that is, you have to fulfill some of the condition or maybe you have to follow some conditions during the process of installation. There are to plan it properly, where that particular cable has to be installed, what capacity is required for my application. That's why the planning is very important. Planning is very important. Once the planning is done, whatever the civil work requirement that is to be taken carried out, and they should be completed within the stipulated period as such. Then afterwards, materials and documentation checklist. That is, you have to keep it everything ready to the materials as well as the documentation part, which is really essential for installation of any type of underground cable of whatever may be the capacity. starting from a lower voltage to the higher voltage as such. Then this work is to be carried out by a person who is having a licensed authority to handle the electrical installation. That is, a skilled labor is essential for the carrying out the installation of electrical cable. That is underground cable. The installation and the commissioning work of the cable. That is, these are the steps that have to be followed during the process of installation. Then, what are the precautions to be considered? Precautions are to be considered during the process of installation are: avoid the sharp bending of the cable. Now, the bend is because the smaller thickness the cable can be bent at maybe at an angle of 45 degree or maybe the 90 degree or so. But as the capacity increases, we cannot bend the cable at a particular angle also. Therefore, it is mandatory that always you have to avoid the sharp bending of the cable. The bending of the cable. Some tolerance will be given for some part of the cable. It always becomes important. Sometimes we are supposed to bend that a particular cable, whatever very thickness. The only thing is the bending should not be right angle or maybe sharp. If it becomes too sharp or maybe at 90 degree at the larger capacity cable or the thickness of the cable, because of the mechanical stresses at a particular joint, there is a chances that the conductors may break out when it is applied with certain amount of the voltage and the current flows. That's why the precautionary measure is avoid the sharp bending of the cables. Check end seals after the installation, before a termination or maybe a jointing. After installation, that end rings, maybe end covers or maybe end rings are properly sealed to avoid the entry of the moisture content from either side of the opening, And if you're using many cables in case of the particular trench, use always a cable rack. Use always the cable rack for proper installation and proper maintenance. Keep the proper tension in the cable. It should not allow to sag. The cable should not be allowed to sag. Always you have to keep a specific tension in the cable without sagging too much. Let us see that what are the guidelines for the installation and the link. What are the guidelines? These guidelines are according to the Indian standard specification or sometimes the guidelines which is given by the manufacturer. That are those things are considered in this chapter as such. The selection of the route should be first decided. Now I have to always select the proper route before the installation. The proper route should be decided, keeping in view the immediate and ultimate use of cable as an integrated part of a transmission distribution system. As you know that the complete reliable operation of a system depends upon how well the particular cable operates. Hence, it is always becomes essential to maintain a proper installation of the underground cable. Therefore, once you get an electrical cable or UG cable, the selection of the route in which the particular cable is to be selected should be done, so that the complete system of the distribution and transmission depends upon the particular, presently it is the underground cable. For transporting the cable drums to work site, it is necessary to check the road conditions. Now, I want to transport the cable from underground stations to the manufacturing area to the installation area. It is always necessary to check the road conditions, whether it has a loose soil or marshy or waterlogged. Include turns on it, because these, when you have the high capacity cables, UG cables, those things will be wound on the drums. It becomes essential to take a great care to transport those electrical equipment, maybe the depends upon the length required. Therefore, you should know the road conditions over which the particular induction motor goes through the area. That has to be considered. The special attention should be paid to the load-bearing capacity of bridges and culverts and other obstruction which fall en route. Therefore, once again, once it is transported, you should always take great steps to protect the UG cable against any damages until it is commissioned. If possible, the cable should be laid along the footpath rather than the carriageway. Always, it is better to put the cables along the roadways or maybe any other carriageway. Plan for the future, the building project. Now, always suppose, for example, our college has a, let us consider the day-to-day expense of the day-to-day current. You cannot go behind 200 amps. I cannot fix up my that UG cable which can carry the current of 200 amps or maybe 300 amps. Maybe let us have the 200 amps. If it within the 2 days, if the capacity increases, the cable burns itself. That's why it is always essential to have the proper cable in the proper path, maybe especially this laid in the footpaths rather than the carriageway. Plan for the future building project. As I said, in current capacity, we have to plan for the future development of our projects, maybe taking consideration 10 to 15% the additional building or maybe additional load may be there on the cable. Considering those things, within once in the 5 years or 6 years, that specification is to be checked, then it is to be rectified by replacing the present one according to the situation which demands at the particular point. Suitable locations for the cable joints and the end termination should be selected as required. The power cable should not be laid above the telecommunication cable. That is, the power cable should not be kept and be laid down on the telecommunication cable to avoid the danger to the life of a person digging to attend the fault in the telecommunication cable. That is, therefore, it is a precautionary measure, that is, the underground cable should not be too near to the power lines. Suppose if you want to dig it, they directly pinches maybe hits directly to the UG cable. It may cause a damage to the person who is in the operation with the particular UG cable. Digging to attend to fault in the telecommunication cable. For identification of the power cable, protective cover such as a bricks or RCC slabs may be suitably marked with the power cable or by the owner. That is, the cable en route, the cable route has to be specified, and the state authority should follow some strict rules. That is, cable, the nomenclature or the nomination, naming should be done as according to power cable or maybe the OFC cable for telecommunication lines. For identification, that is what they are saying, that is, you have to keep it on horizontal or vertical. That's all. Then cables laid across the roads, railway tracks, and water pipes lined to be passed through ducts made of steel, cast iron, the plastic, cement, or earthenware ducts. Cable, suppose if you want to lay the cable crossing the roads at the time, the proper procedures to be followed. Those cables are passed through the ducts of the steel, the cast iron, the plastic, cement. The diameter of the cable conduit or a pipe or a duct should be at least 1.5 times the more than the outer diameter of the cable. That is, a cable duct, maybe that is a cable trench, maybe cable conduit when we use to pass the cable along the roadside, maybe crossing the roadside, the conduit should be 1 diameter should be 1.5 more than the outer diameter of the cable. The duct pipes should be mechanically strong to withstand the force due to the heavy traffic. Therefore, here the ducts and the pipe which are used to cross the particular cable across the road should be proper enough and should be capable of withstanding the mechanical force that gets developed during the movement of the vehicle. When the cables are laid under the railway track, cables should be laid in reinforced sperm, the concrete or a cast iron. Suppose sometimes it all becomes necessary to cross the railway crossing at the time, special care to be taken to lay down a cable so that it can pass through overhead line to the cable as such, Now we see that the methods of laying and installation. The conventional methods of the cable laying, or as for the conventional method, generally they used by a people for laying of the cable, or laying of the cable direct in ground. Take the cable, dig it maybe 1 or 2 feet, and keep the cable and close it. Drawing of the cable in depths. That's the one method. Drawing of the cable is method. Then third one is laying of the cables in racks in air, laying of the cables on racks inside the tunnel. That is, we have can keep the cable in racks. We can keep it open to air, or maybe in the tunnel. Laying along the building structure, in some of the apartment, that it becomes very difficult for them to provide each cable for each of the faculty member that they have, if they have the light. Therefore, that laying along the building structure is one of the method of the installing or maybe laying of the cable. The choice of the above the laying system depends upon the installation condition, initial cost of laying, the maintenance and repair charges and replacement. The choice of above laying, that is, choice of a laying of a cable, depends upon the installation condition, the place where that the cable is to be laid out. Then the second one is the cost involved. If a cable capacity is very less, if I install the racks together for a laying, it is not economically viable. Therefore, initial cost has to be taken into the consideration, and the maintenance, once it is installed, the further maintenance should not be done every time as such. That is, that's why a proper way of the laying of the cable should be done, so that maintenance free should be there. The reliability of the underground cable network depends upon, to a considerable extent, upon the proper laying and attachment of fittings. The reliability totally depends upon how well you lay it, how well you joint it, how well you terminate at both ends of the cable. That is, end boxes, joints, branch connectors. There are three main methods of laying the underground cable. There are many methods. Among that one, we are going to consider only three methods, the major methods which are used or may be used for laying out of the cable, like direct laying, drawing system, and solid system. These are the three methods what we are going to discuss in this class of the laying and installation of UV cables. First, we'll go one by one. The direct laying method. This is the simplest method of laying the cable, that is underground cable, now used in the earlier days as well as the present modern process and modern system and modern practice. In this, a trench is of about 1.5 meter deep and 45 centimeter wide is dug. The trench is covered with a layer of a fine sand of about a 10 centimeter thickness. That you are going to dig a trench, then according to the dimension is given, and you're going to have some sand bed at the bottom according to the thickness given here. Then the cable is laid over the sand. The sand prevents the entry of moisture content from the ground. The sand prevents the entry of moisture content from the ground and thus protects the cable from a decay. After cable has been laid in the trench, covered with another layer of sand, that is, first we lay the trench of specific dimensions, then we put the sand bed, then the cable is kept, then above that one once again sand bed is kept, maybe made to the form. After the cable has been laid down, it is covered with another layer of the sand of 10 mm thickness. That is the second process. The trench is then covered with the bricks. That is, you're going to have just a house-like structure in a particular trench. In some cases, at the bottom also they keep the bricks. Sometimes there will be sand, and you're going to have a small house-like structure in case of the cable trench, and that cable will be allowed maybe pass on to the particular the path that is about the direct laying. We'll see that the simple that is this method is just, you can see that one, the trench is there, then we are going to have a sand bed here, sand bed, and this is a sand bed, then we are going to keep the cable, and once again we are going to have a sand bed above that particular cable, then it is covered with the bricks of certain dimensions, so that whenever you want to have a digging, you are using the mechanical equipment, first it should not go directly to the cable, it will hit the particular cable which comes across the path of the digging as such. The advantages of this method are, it is simple and the less costly method, that is economically viable. It gives the best condition for dissipating the heat generated in the cable. That is, suppose heat gets generated, that has to be dissipated. You will be having a more space so that heat can be dissipated. Likewise, we have the procedure for underground cable, but simplest among this one is the method. And for this one, we don't want to have in the 6 to 7% for a it is clean and safe method as cable is invisible and free from external disturbances. Now let us come to the disadvantage. The extension of a load is possible only by a completely new excavation which may cost as much as the original work. Suppose if a new extension is required, I want to have the laying of a new cable at the time, the extension of the cable is required at the time we have to excavate the new trench. It becomes just like original work. The alterations in the cable network cannot be made easily. Once trench is there, I cannot change it unless I can remove completely cable. The maintenance cost is very high, and the localization of the fault is very difficult. That is, becomes very difficult to check the fault which might have occurred in case of the cable. That is, localization of the fault is very difficult. It cannot be used in congested area where excavation is expensive and inconvenient. In some cases, especially cities, everywhere will be provided with underground drainage system or anything, waterworks or maybe the pipelines. It becomes very difficult in case of some area, especially congested area, to excavation for the underground cable will become expensive and inconvenient method. This method of laying cable is used in open areas, especially this is feasible in case of the open areas. Now let us see the desired depth. The minimum depth of laying from a ground surface to the top of the cable, that is below. For a high voltage cable, which is ranging from 3.3 kV to 11 kV. It is from the top to the height of the cable, that is the surface of the cable is 0.9 meter. For high voltage cables of the capacity range, it is 1.05 meters. Low voltage cable and control cables is 0.75 meters. The cable at a road, it is 1 meter. Road crossing is 1 meter, and railway level crossing it's 1 meter. The desired clearances from the cables are as below. From one cable to other cable, the desired clearances are, I cannot keep the control cable and the power cable in the same cable trench. There should be the physical distance or the clearance between the two cables of the control cable as well as the power cable. That is, those are the power cable to a communication cable, it is 0.3. Power cable to control cable is 0.2. Power cable to gas or water mains is 0.3. Drawing system. In this method, conduit or a duct, glazed stone or a cast or a concrete are laid in the ground with the manholes at a suitable position. That you can see that one. This is a drawing system. We're going to have a concrete structure having the holes which is sized for a different size of the cable. Now in case of the drawing system, you can see in this system, I can lay down 4 cables of a different capacities of the same capacities suitable en route. The cable are then pulled into the position of the manhole. That is manholes. That is now the 3 of the ducts carry the transmission cable, and 4th duct carries a relay protection connection. That is depends upon the system that I can lay down the different types of a cable in the particular drawing system. Now this is the other one, the figure which represents the laying of the cable in the cable racks. Cable racks, that's also sometimes we call it as a drawing system. You can see that the first rack it provided 4 cables. Suppose this system will be used in case of the industrial system, the big huge industry where number of cables will be passed on into the particular the cable trench, or maybe that's why the cable tray. This is about the drawing system. Last one is a solid system. In the system method of laying, the cable is laid in open pipes dug out in the earth along the cable route. That is, it is simplest compared to normally we use a drawing system, or maybe the first method of the laying of the cable as such, laying of the cable. This completes the today's session. That today we are the topics related to installation and procedure used for maybe the precautions that are considered during the installation and the laying, and of course you have seen the methods of the laying of the cable with the proper precautions according to the standards. About topics comes under the taxonomy level of the L1 and L2, that is remembering and the understanding. There are many books are available. Among the books are written here, those can be used for your reference. The testing and commissioning, operation and maintenance of electrical equipment, written by S. Rao, and also you can refer the one more textbook written by Dr. Parul Chakkasali with the title of Testing and Commissioning of Electrical Equipment. Thank you.